Listen closely, because this isn't just another scandal you scroll past and forget. This is a slow-motion implosion of a world champion's reputation, unfolding live, for everyone to witness. Every person tangled in this storm is bleeding in public, because what began as quiet whispers has exploded into receipts, legal threats, leaked messages, and friendships shattering in real time. Once you trace the timeline, there's no turning back. Every step exposes more. At the eye of this hurricane is Claressa Shields, undefeated in the ring, hailed as a paragon of discipline, power, and dominance. Yet beyond the ropes, her world allegedly descends into chaos, betrayal, and a brutal tug-of-war of ego and desperation. And this is where the story turns dark. Not idle gossip, but claims so intimate they could ruin careers, upend lives, and invite legal disaster. Warnings are thrown. Names dragged through the mud. Lawyers quietly mobilize. Cease and desist letters move behind the curtain. This isn't playful shade, it's full-blown legal warfare. Then comes the betrayal nobody saw coming. A so-called best friend doesn't just speak, she detonates. Allegations surface that freeze the internet in disbelief. Underage encounters, pregnancies during training, abortions, extreme weight cuts while expecting. Claims so shocking that people don't know whether to scream, cry, or question everything they thought they knew. And just when it seems it can't get messier, the so-called love triangle explodes into a five-way tangle: a married man, his wife, an alleged side affair, a fiancé, and a public persona now shattered by leaked receipts. Texts hit timelines, and suddenly the narrative flips. The invincible champion image cracks, desperate messages leak, and the internet becomes merciless. It's no longer about who's right, it's who's lying, who's manipulating, and who stands to lose everything. And that's when Tasha K steps in. Panic spreads. Captions are altered. Public apologies are issued. Lawyers clock in. Because once the receipts drop, there's no reversing the damage. Keep watching. This isn't gossip anymore. This is exposure.
Okay, and so here's what I'm going to do in terms of the cease and desist. So my lawyers have been going back and forth with her lawyer, and we've been trying to figure out what was actually said that was defamatory. Now, there was one thing that I did see that was mentioned that could be grounds for any type of lawsuit, but we have since corrected that. And so let me tell you what happened right before we get into the specifics of why we're here. All right, because this is my formal apology to the GOAT, to the greatest to ever do it. Okay, I told you if I get something wrong, we're gonna correct it.
The second lawyers enter the room, a story stops being tea and starts turning into a weapon. Gossip can be denied. Rumors can be joked away. But paperwork? Paperwork doesn't laugh. It doesn't blink. And that's what makes this situation feel so ice-cold. Claressa Shields isn't just a trending name anymore. She's being pulled into a narrative that moves like a controlled demolition. One allegation drops. Then another. Then another. And suddenly, you're not watching a scandal unfold. You're watching a public identity get dismantled piece by piece, in real time. And here's what most people are missing. Claressa didn't step into this chaos as a random influencer chasing clout. She entered as a champion. A world-class athlete with belts, statistics, and history. A resume built to silence noise. But the internet doesn't respect resumes when it senses blood in the water. Vulnerability changes everything. So when Claressa's name became attached to Papoose, a man still legally married to Remy, the story didn't just get messy. It became volatile. Explosive. Because this isn't a harmless love triangle with single people and hurt feelings. This is a situation where everyone is guarding something. Image, reputation, leverage, power. And the moment control becomes the objective, fairness disappears. That's why the below-the-belt accusations landed so hard. These weren't throwaway jokes or casual shade. These were claims designed to flip public sympathy and trigger legal consequences. The kind of accusations that make people whisper, "Don't play with her name like that, she'll handle it legally." And when that warning starts repeating itself, it tells you everything. It means the argument has already left the comment sections. The real war has moved behind closed doors. Because cease and desist energy isn't born online. It's born in private calls, in forwarded screenshots, in group chats that go silent when someone realizes they crossed a line. And this is where the story turns even darker. Because Claressa isn't just facing one opponent. She's surrounded by a collapsing circle. Every connection is cracking. Every alliance is unstable. Remy is tied into it. Papoose is tied into it. And the pressure isn't coming from one direction, it's closing in from all sides. Papoose is tangled in it. Tasha K is tangled in it. And then, the most dangerous player steps into the room, the so-called best friend. Because strangers can lie. Opponents can exaggerate. But when someone who claims to know your life inside and out steps forward, the audience stops seeing gossip. They start seeing possibility. And that's exactly why the Jada angle detonates. The allegations tied to Jada aren't tea, they're trauma-level claims. Underage encounters. Exploitation. Pregnancies. Decisions made in chaos. True or false, the damage is immediate, because you cannot casually toss that into the public sphere without consequences. Suddenly, the audience is forced into a split-screen nightmare. On one side, Claressa the untouchable champion. On the other, Claressa the alleged victim of a story she never asked to be part of. And right there, the war changes shape. This isn't just cheating or side relationships anymore. People are asking a darker question. If this information existed for years, why surface it now? Revenge? Attention? Or a pressure release after a relationship fractured? And just like that, the Papoose Remy Claressa triangle stops looking like a triangle. It becomes a pentagon. Every person has an extra connection, an additional relationship, a hidden angle, a motive tucked under the surface. Remy and Papoose are still legally bound. That alone is a landmine. Remy is rumored to have her own alleged scandal. Papoose is rumored to have shifted emotionally toward Claressa. Claressa has a fiancé of her own. And suddenly, the romance narrative transforms. It's no longer about love, it's about power, optics, and positioning. That's why the alleged phone call moment goes viral. A slip. A panicked voice. An instant disconnect. One fleeting second, endlessly replayed and remixed, becomes the symbol of the entire scandal. From there, texts take center stage as the next weapon. Because leaked messages don't just reveal events, they reveal tone, intent, desperation, and vulnerability when someone believed no one was watching. And that's when the public reaction turns merciless. If those messages read like begging, overchecking, chasing attention, it doesn't matter what the truth is behind the scenes. The internet will declare a winner and a loser anyway. And the cruelest part? They'll do it to a champion. People start spreading lines like, undefeated in the ring, but lost in love. Simple. Sharp. Humiliating. Viral. That one sentence compresses an entire storm into a single, devastating jab. As that chaos spins, another storyline quietly slides in, one with teeth. The receipts conversation. Not just receipts about who slept with who, but receipts about who said what, posted what, implied what in public, and how every action gets interpreted. Once commentary platforms start tying allegations to drug use, misconduct, or character flaws, the tone shifts. This is no longer content, it's potential defamation. And this is where Tasha K becomes central, not just a commentator, but someone walking a knife's edge between gossip and legal exposure. When she mentions receipts, the audience expects destruction. But behind the scenes, receipts can mean screenshots being archived for court. And that's why the Hawaii angle matters. Hawaii isn't just a backdrop, it becomes the stage where the side chick storyline reportedly escalates, the visual anchor for chaos, the moment people claim the narrative turned real, undeniable, and explosive.
So I ended up doing a story on her being in Hawaii with Papoose, right? And Papoose's side chick allegedly popped up and said, I'm in Hawaii staying pretty too. Now, Remy Ma has already spilled the wine on Claressa not being the only one.
And notice the pattern. Even in that clip, it plays out like a chain reaction. Hawaii. Papoose. Side chick. Remy already speaking. This isn't a tidy romance story. It's a loud, combustible mess, where Claressa allegedly isn't even the only one. And that's what makes public perception so dangerous. The moment the not the only one narrative sticks, Claressa's position shifts overnight. She's no longer the fresh love interest, she becomes just another player in a volatile game. And that's when embarrassment takes center stage. Not because Claressa can't date who she wants, but because the optics paint her as attached to a man still legally bound to someone else. The internet eats that up like a punchline. But this isn't where the story ends. It doesn't stop at humiliation, it escalates into legal tension. Platforms aren't just reporting who shows up with who anymore. They're interpreting motives, labeling roles, and mapping power dynamics. Every post, every comment, every caption becomes a piece of evidence in a narrative that's growing increasingly dangerous.
The video of Claressa's man who's married, because she is technically dating a married man, which is a mistress, which is she's a champion and a side bitch at the same time, no allegedly, okay? He's still married to Remy, and you are very much thirsty, okay? Like I said, this is my formal apology.
Because at this point, it's no longer just gossip. Claressa is facing a public label, dating a man still legally married to Remy. And then comes the killer blow, the formal apology. An apology isn't issued when things are harmless. It happens when someone realizes the story has crossed into dangerous territory. And that's exactly the feeling this moment should leave the audience with, not closure, but a chilling question. If this stage already demands a formal apology, imagine what happens when the next receipts drop. Because after that, the story doesn't just get messy, it gets expensive, consequential, and inescapable. By the time the apology surfaced, the damage had already settled in deep. Apologies don't erase narratives, they confirm a boundary has been crossed. And once that boundary exists, no one asks what was said. They ask, why did it have to be walked back? And this is the pivot, from embarrassment into legal gravity. Until now, messy relationships, blurred lines, leaked texts, public humiliation, ugly, yes, but survivable. But the moment allegations threaten Claressa's career, her titles, her eligibility, her livelihood, the tone shifts instantly. This isn't about love or betrayal anymore. This is about proof, evidence, and stakes that could make or break a champion. And that's where the weed narrative enters the frame. Suddenly, the internet isn't debating feelings anymore. It's arguing rules, consequences, and potential disqualification. Now, the debate isn't about feelings, it's about tests, percentages, rules, and consequences. A mouth swab, a urine test. One result positive, one negative. And there's a world champion athlete trapped in the middle of a story she insists is false. This is where the chaos begins to feel less like random drama and more like strategic positioning. When accusations start threatening medals, belts, and a lifetime of achievement, people stop joking. They start dialing lawyers. Behind the scenes, entire teams go into panic mode. Captions are scrutinized. Old posts are re-examined. Screenshots aren't saved for content, they are archived for protection. And this is exactly when Tasha K's platform becomes a lightning rod. Not because she sparked the fire, but because her reach amplified the storm. And amplification carries weight, responsibility, and consequence. That's why this particular interview clip matters so much. It captures the precise moment where commentary collides with liability, where online drama intersects with real-world stakes.
Something was posted alleging that Claressa smoked on our platform, and that is not true. To my knowledge, Claressa hasn't smoked any weed. To my knowledge, Papoose didn't give her any weed. And so that was damaging, right? And so I apologize for that, Claressa, and apologize that came out on my platform. And so we have since changed the caption to something that was directed at what was in the content. And I told my team, don't be adding nothing extra. Don't be adding, I know you're messy. That's why I hired y'all, but don't add nothing extra, because then it costs me extra. And then I got to pay these lawyers, and these lawyers be $600 an hour.
Listen closely to what's happening in that clip. This isn't denial. This is damage control. The words aren't emotional, they are procedural. Captions, posts, costs, lawyers, hourly rates. That's not how someone gossips. That's how someone speaks when they realize the story has crossed into a zone where money, liability, and survival are at stake. And the subtext is deafening. When someone says, that was damaging, they're not talking feelings, they're signaling legal exposure. When hourly rates enter the conversation, that's fear-wearing professionalism. And here's where the audience starts noticing another layer. The apology doesn't feel personal. It doesn't say, I hurt you. It says, this could cost me. Once viewers sense that, Sympathy evaporates, suspicion grows. The question shifts: if this part was wrong, what else might have been exaggerated? But the internet doesn't pause for nuance. It accelerates. While one side scrambles to correct captions, the other side leaks context. Old screenshots resurface. Clips are replayed frame by frame. Every pause, every inflection, every deflection is dissected. And that's when the receipts conversation mutates. Receipts no longer just show what happened, they determine who is believed. And in this case, belief is everything. Claressa's team insists the allegations are false, blaming contaminated tests, environmental exposure, technicalities. And while none of that is impossible, the public doesn't wait for appeals. It reacts. And it reacts brutally. Especially when the story has already painted Claressa as vulnerable, emotionally entangled, chasing validation from a married man, and allegedly not the only one. When the weed narrative enters the discussion, it doesn't exist alone. It layers on top of an already unstable story, stacking suspicion and consequence. And that's when the internet does what it does best. It collapses a complex human into a single character. Not a person, a character. And once you are a character, every action is interpreted through the harshest possible lens. All of this is unfolding in public view, with every pause, post, and reaction magnified. Something far more explosive is stirring beneath the surface. Because while enemies can hurt you, former friends can destroy you. And that's exactly where Jada re-enters the story, not as a rumor, not as a background name, but as a direct threat. The allegations linked to Jada don't just embarrass Claressa, they rewrite her entire life story. They don't question her choices. They question her agency, her control, her narrative. And that's why even those who don't believe Jada feel uneasy, unsettled by what's being said. Because if even a fraction of it is true, this doesn't remain gossip, it crosses into criminal territory. And here's the terrifying part. Once allegations like these enter the public record, they cannot be erased. Clarifications don't undo them. They linger. They exist forever. That's why silence becomes a weapon. Notice how Claressa doesn't rush online. She doesn't rant. She doesn't clap back emotionally. Reacting with emotion would be a trap. Instead, her response shifts into something colder, more calculated, positioning her as a victim, not a participant. And that change matters, legally, strategically, narratively. Frame her as harmed, manipulated, exploited, and the story flips from side chick drama to survivor narrative. Suddenly, the person who thought they were exposing her is the one under threat. And that's exactly why the next interview segment lands like a warning shot, not for gossip, not for drama, but as a strategic signal of control and consequence.
Within reason. So this is Jada Davis, and this is Claressa's ex-bestie. I don't take it that they're still best friends, because why would she be telling this girl business like this? I said, do she think she Tasha K or something? Does this little girl think she Tasha K? Jada! What? Baby, you should have came to me and I would have helped to put this out in a way where you're not looking bad. This is bad, Jada. This is bad. You really made Claressa look good and you made yourself look bad. You're a bad, bad person. A bad person. I don't even understand what is the point of you doing all of this. Yeah, I'm about to hire her. Leave me alone. Leave me alone. Listen. I wanted to reach out for a job. Here's the thing. Okay, listen, baby girl. Just like my team is gonna go through newsroom training with my defamation lawyers so they'll know how to post so that it doesn't cost us money. If Claressa turns around and sues you, you're going to lose because she was a victim.
That clip is surgical in its intent. It doesn't validate allegations. It redirects the danger. Instead of asking, did this happen? It asks, why are you saying this? And that shift is powerful, because when motive becomes the focal point, credibility wobbles. Revenge. Resentment. A falling out gone nuclear. Suddenly, the internet rewinds, replays, and reinterprets everything through a new lens. The conversation pivots. It's no longer about exposing Claressa. It's about questioning Jada's timing, her intent, her strategy. That isn't accidental. That's narrative warfare, and it works because it taps into a truth people instinctively understand. The most devastating betrayals come from inside the circle. At this stage, the story has evolved again. It's not just about Claressa. It's not just about Papoose or Remy. It's about who controls the narrative, and whoever controls the narrative controls the outcome. Look closely, Claressa's image is under assault. Tasha K is navigating legal minefields. Jada is being framed as reckless. Papoose stays mostly silent. Remy's presence looms, even without saying a word. Silence has become a weapon. And silence is louder than any post. By the end of this segment, the audience shouldn't feel informed, they should feel uneasy, unsettled, anticipating the next move. Because the scariest stories aren't the ones fully exposed. They are the ones where everyone is protecting themselves at once. In those moments, the truth doesn't come clean, it leaks in fragments, through accidents, through half-hearted apologies. And that is exactly where this story is headed next. If this stage is about legal danger and narrative control, the next chapter won't be about embarrassment. It will be about consequences, power, and who can survive the fallout. Now it becomes a question of who collapses first, and someone always does. By the time silence is wielded as a strategy, the story is already spinning out of control. Silence doesn't calm chaos, it redirects it. At this point, every person entangled in this web understands one truth. What happens next cannot be undone with explanations. The outcome will be dictated by who breaks first. This is where part 3 begins, not with a fresh accusation, but with consequences. The internet doesn't move on once a story enters legal territory. It digs deeper. Screenshots are archived. Old interviews are replayed. Past clips, once harmless, suddenly carry new weight. And as the public examines every frame, it becomes clear that this may never have been about love. It may have been about leverage, control, and positioning. Look at the pattern. Claressa's image is publicly untouchable, disciplined, focused, elevated, world-class. Privately, emotional dependence allegedly grows on a man still legally tied to another woman. Public humiliation follows. Legal threats appear. Apologies drop. Narratives are reframed. This is not random. This is a collapse sequence. And collapse sequences always reveal the weakest structures first. For Claressa, the real danger isn't the gossip itself, it's what the gossip does to her credibility when stacked layer upon layer. Not a single claim, but multiple, positioned close enough to feel plausible. That's why the pivot toward framing Claressa as a victim becomes critical. Victimhood changes the legal posture, the moral posture, and even public perception. When Claressa is seen as someone exploited, manipulated, or emotionally cornered, suddenly the people speaking about her appear reckless. And reckless speech? That is the fastest way to lose credibility, influence, and control in this volatile narrative. To lose a case. And that brings us to the most uncomfortable truth in this entire saga. The most dangerous allegations aren't the ones shouted online. They're the ones that force people into silence. Look at what happens now. Papoose stays quiet. Remy doesn't overshare. Tasha K tightens her language. And Jada finds herself increasingly isolated within her own claims. This isn't coincidence, it's risk assessment in real time. Once the word lawsuit becomes tangible, alliances shift instantly. The loud go quiet. The jokers start deleting posts. Those who thought they were exposing others suddenly realize, exposure cuts both ways. And this is when the story turns cold. Because at this stage, the narrative is no longer about truth, it's about survivability. Who can endure the fight? Who can withstand discovery? Who has messages they don't want unsealed, or witnesses they don't want questioned? That's why the registered weapon comment lands differently. Not as bravado, not as threat, it's a warning. A signal that survival in this story depends less on words and more on strategy, caution, and knowing when to move silently.
And the type of fire said, if Claressa fire you, she gonna whoop your ass. Oh, Claressa gonna whoop your ass. Oh, Claressa gonna whoop your ass and I can't save you. Nobody can save you. Nobody. She's a trained killer. Her hands are trained. They're registered.
Listen closely to what that line actually does. On the surface, it might sound like bravado. But underneath, it's about consequence. It reminds everyone watching that Claressa isn't just a public figure under scrutiny, she's a trained fighter, a person whose body itself carries legal and professional weight. And whether taken literally or metaphorically, the message is clear. This situation is not safe for reckless mouths. That single clip shifts the temperature of the narrative. Suddenly, the audience isn't just thinking about embarrassment. They are thinking about what happens when words spill into real-world danger. And that's when the internet starts backing away. Not because anyone cares, it's because fear is louder than curiosity. At this stage, the best friend betrayal story begins to rot from the inside out. The question stops being what did Jada say? And becomes why did she say it that way? Because there's a difference between speaking your truth and unloading someone else's trauma into the public eye. When that line is crossed, public sympathy vanishes almost instantly. Harder questions emerge. Why wasn't this revealed earlier? Why now, when Claressa is already under public fire? Why release allegations that, if true, could entangle multiple adults, organizations, and systems? These questions don't protect Claressa, they endanger the person making the claims. And that's when the internet smells a different kind of blood. Suddenly, Jada no longer looks brave. She looks exposed. And exposure without protection is the most dangerous position anyone can occupy online. Meanwhile, the fake Black Love branding analysis begins to crystallize. This story has grown bigger than any one person. Because Remy and Papoose weren't just a couple. They were an image, a marketed symbol, a counter-narrative to chaos, loyalty after prison, ride or die storytelling. And once that image starts to crack, everything beneath it is scrutinized anew. Old interviews feel scripted. Past praise now seems strategic. Silences take on new meaning. It all feels intentional. People begin questioning whether the relationship was ever real, or whether it was a long-running performance, carefully staged to benefit everyone involved. And Claressa, unfortunately, may have stepped onto that collapsing stage unaware of how fragile the setup already was. Here's the part no one says out loud. If Papoose truly valued Claressa the way he allegedly claimed, she wouldn't be facing public humiliation alone. She wouldn't be absorbing the narrative damage by herself. She wouldn't be the one being labeled, dissected, and interrogated, while he remains largely insulated. That imbalance doesn't look like love, it looks like utility. And once that realization sinks in, the public narrative hardens, not against Claressa, but against the situation she allowed herself to enter. The tone around her shifts, from mockery to pity, from ridicule to concern, from side chick jokes to how did she get here? And that pivot is devastating. Because pity doesn't restore power, it strips it away. By the end of part 3, the audience should feel one thing very clearly. This story is no longer escalating for entertainment. It's stabilizing for damage control, which means the loudest phase may already be over. What comes next won't be shouted online. It won't be live-streamed. It won't be joked about. It will happen quietly, through lawyers, through statements that never surface, through evidence that remains unseen. When that happens, the public is left with fragments, edited memories, unanswered questions. But one truth is undeniable. Whatever this began as love, ego, attention, fame, it ended as a war of narratives. And in wars like these, the last person standing isn't the one who told the loudest story. It's the one who knew when to stop talking. And that's why the story doesn't end here. Because the silence you're hearing now, that's not peace.